At 6:42 a.m., the quiet air over Rivnechka shattered. In less than 10 seconds, silence turned into shock. Russian T-90 tanks rolled through the valley, each with armor thick enough to stop almost any shell on Earth, while BM-30 Smerch launchers fired rockets the size of cars, each capable of carving a crater 30 feet wide. Overhead, Ka-52 helicopters sliced through the clouds, releasing volleys of unguided rockets that rained down like steel hail. Ukraine answered with precision instead of panic. HIMARS launchers fired guided rockets faster than a jetliner. PZH-2000 howitzers thundered from miles away, each shell landing within a few yards of its mark. Above it all, a Bayraktar TB-2 drone hovered like an unblinking eye, sending coordinates to soldiers who could barely hear over the noise. What followed was not chaos. It was coordination, a battle waged across land, air, and signals. A test of endurance and intelligence where every mistake meant another fireball on the horizon. Something happened that morning that changed the balance in this entire region. But how far did it go? And who truly paid the price? Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what comes next. And tell me, what year were you born? At 6:42 a.m. Morning fog covered the northern rail hub of Rivnechka, a quiet town that had never seen real war until that day. Beneath the haze, Russian armored columns began to move. 7 T-90 tanks rolled side by side, their engines rumbling like distant thunder. Behind them, a line of BMP-2s carried troops armed for street combat. Then the sky split open. 2 BM-30 Smerch systems launched a full salvo of 12 rockets, each one weighing more than 800 pounds and capable of carving a crater 30 feet wide. Ukraine's sensors picked up the launch within seconds. From a farm ridge 12 miles away, a pair of HIMARS fired 6 guided rockets toward the advancing armor. At the same moment, 2 PZH-2000 howitzers began rapid fire, their 155mm shells dropping with frightening accuracy. Overhead, a Bayraktar TB-2 drone streamed live coordinates to ground control, marking every hit. The rail junction had turned from a transport lifeline into a battlefield of fire and steel. Every shot now meant one side would move an inch and the other would bleed for it. What would you feel, watching that transformation from silence to chaos? At 8:03 a.m., the second Russian wave gathered strength along the Rivnechka corridor. The brigade commander ordered his T-90s forward, their engines growling like beasts trapped inside a steel jungle. Each one weighed over 50 tons, crawling through mud that cracked under pressure. Their goal was simple yet brutal: reach the rail junction and cut Ukraine's northern supply line in half. Across the ridge, the Ukrainian artillery commander waited in silence. Forward observers watched through thermal scopes as the column entered the valley, glowing like a necklace of heat against the cold earth. When the signal came, 2 HIMARS launchers fired 6 rockets, each moving faster than a bullet train. Within seconds, the first 3 tanks vanished in fireballs that rolled 50 feet high. From 12 miles away, PZH-2000 howitzers joined in, sending 155mm shells with machine precision. A mobile jamming team disrupted Russian radios, filling their channels with static and panic. Orders disappeared. Confusion took command. The corridor that was meant to lead forward had turned into a furnace. So tell me, is that what modern genius looks like, or just a smarter kind of destruction? 10:22 a.m. The Rivnechka corridor fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted like a volcano. What looked like calm farmland was in fact a carefully wired battlefield. Beneath the dirt, hundreds of pounds of explosives waited, connected by pressure sensors the size of soda cans. Ukrainian engineers had spent weeks studying the soil, the slope, and even the sound of tank tracks. Every number, every wire, every inch had been measured. The first T-90 rolled over a buried charge, triggering a shaped explosion that sliced through its armor like a knife through fruit. The blast lifted the 70-ton machine sideways and threw it against the embankment. The fireball rose 70 feet, and the shockwave cracked windows in the nearby village. Within seconds, more detonations followed. 5 BMP-2 vehicles lost their tracks, stopping dead as smoke poured from open hatches. From the southern tree line, FPV drones screamed upward. Each carried a PG-7 VL warhead weighing just 4 pounds, small enough to fit in a backpack, but strong enough to tear open steel. Flying at almost 90 miles per hour, they darted through smoke like angry hornets. One drone slammed into a disabled BMP and turned it into a rolling furnace. Another struck an ammunition crate, throwing sparks into the sky like fireworks. Then came the deep mechanical roar of helicopter blades. Two Russian Ka-52 gunships emerged from the clouds, lining up for an attack run. Each carried 80 S-8 rockets, unguided but deadly when fired in volleys. Trails of white smoke cut across the valley and the ground began to shake. But the defenders were ready. Hidden in basements and ruined homes, Stinger teams waited for the right angle. The first missile streaked upward faster than sound and hit a Ka-52 in the tail rotor. The aircraft spun wildly and broke apart before crashing in a field of birch trees. The second helicopter pulled back, dropping countermeasures that flashed like daytime lightning. By 10:45 a.m., the battlefield looked unrecognizable. Burned metal, shattered tracks, and thick smoke twisting into the sky. Ukrainian artillery added another layer to the storm. PZH-2000 howitzers fired at 10 rounds per minute, each 155mm shell corrected by radar and GPS. The explosions landed one after another, cutting a perfect semicircle around the trapped Russian column. Every impact sounded less like chaos and more like rhythm. To anyone watching, it seemed like madness. Yet behind it was pure calculation. Timing, signal delay, drone telemetry, satellite updates, even wind speed. Technology had turned destruction into choreography. Modern war had become less about bravery and more about equations. Every crater was a solved problem. By 11 a.m., half the Russian armor in the corridor was burning or disabled. Radios went silent. Units tried to reverse but blocked each other in the narrow lane. Ukrainian FPV teams launched another swarm, their screens glowing as drones hunted heat signatures. One operator later said it felt like playing a game where every wrong move cost someone's life. As the fires grew, sunlight dimmed behind black smoke. Even miles away, villagers saw the orange glow rising from the fields. Journalists would later call the Rivnechka corridor a furnace built by precision. For Ukraine, it was not only defense, but proof that intelligence could defeat brute force. For Russia, it was a day where strength turned against itself. And for everyone watching, it was a mirror showing what war had become. If you were standing there, watching drones circle above fields of fire, what would you feel? Would you call it mastery or madness? 12:08 p.m. The sky above Rivnechka turned from gray to silver as the heat haze thickened. For a moment, the battlefield paused. Then a thunder that did not come from the ground rolled across the valley. Two Ukrainian Su-27 fighters broke through the clouds at 480 miles per hour, flying so low that their shadows skimmed the treetops. Their mission was not to destroy tanks, but to blind the eyes watching from above. Each jet carried two Kh-31P anti-radar missiles, weapons built to hunt invisible signals. The missiles were long and thin, painted dull gray, each one weighing 200 pounds and traveling at nearly Mach 3. As soon as Russian radar arrays switched on to search for targets, they revealed their own positions. In less than half a minute, the Ukrainian pilots fired. The Kh-31PS streaked forward, trailing white smoke like lightning frozen in midair. 22 seconds later, the first impact hit a Nebo M radar truck stationed 6 miles north of the front. The explosion threw the array from its chassis and turned the surrounding snow into glass. The second strike followed moments after, collapsing the radar dome of an S-400 launcher. The shock wave rolled across the fields like a wave on a shallow sea. At the same time, a mobile electronic warfare vehicle on the Ukrainian side activated its wideband jammers. It was not loud. It sounded like nothing at all. Yet in that silence, every Russian targeting system began to lose connection. Missiles veered off course, communications lagged, guidance systems flickered. For exactly 4 minutes and 20 seconds, the Russian network went blind. That short window was all Ukraine needed. From 3 hidden launch sites south of Rivnechka, 2 HIMARS systems, and a battery of PZH-2000 opened fire. Their coordinates came from a swarm of Bayraktar TB2 drones that had been circling quietly for hours. 6 guided rockets and 12 155mm shells flew toward the same target zone. A Russian ammunition depot and fuel convoy parked behind a hill. The first explosion came at 12:14 p.m. It started with a white flash, then a pillar of black smoke climbed 200 feet into the sky. Fuel trucks burned like torches. Ammunition trailers began to cook off, each detonation louder than thunder. A second blast crater opened 30 feet wide, throwing debris in every direction. The heat melted nearby power lines and turned asphalt into liquid. Ukraine's drone operators were already watching. 20 FPV drones equipped with PG-7VR warheads launched from the tree line. Flying at 70 miles per hour, they hugged the terrain, skimming barely 10 feet above the ground. Each operator controlled them through a live video feed, weaving through debris and smoke like players guiding sparks through a maze. The drones hit their marks, one after another. Each strike small but devastating, each one like a match touching dry oil. By 12:30 p.m., the entire rear echelon of the Russian advance had turned into a storm of fire. What was meant to resupply the front became its own collapse. Satellite images captured from orbit showed a smoke column stretching more than 2 miles wide. And still, the air battle was not over. 2 MiG-29s interceptors entered the area from the west, releasing chaff and flares to protect the Ukrainian jets as they climbed higher. In the span of 5 minutes, the airspace above Rivnechka held more than 30 flying machines, fighters, drones, surveillance units, each connected by data, timing, and invisible algorithms. It looked chaotic, but it was a network in motion, like a living organism. That is the new shape of war. Every movement carries code. Every bullet has coordinates. Even silence has meaning. The KH-31PS, the HIMARS, the TB2S. They are not separate tools, but one nervous system reacting faster than any human can think. By 12:45 p.m., the valley quieted again. The fuel depot burned at the horizon like a second sunrise. The Ukrainian units began to relocate before counter-battery fire could respond. The soldiers on the ground did not cheer. They watched in silence, faces orange from reflected flames. In the old wars, victory came with flags and parades. Now it comes in digital pings and satellite images. No one shouts. No one runs forward. The noise has moved to the machines and the humans just listen. If you were standing there, hearing that calm after so much fury, what would you feel? Relief, pride, or the strange emptiness that follows control? And do you think the more precise we become, the more we lose the need to feel it all? 3:18 p.m. The battle for Rivnechka was no longer about territory. It had become a test of endurance and memory. The rail junction that once carried wheat and passengers now lay under a veil of black smoke. What was once a transport line had turned into a scar running through the heart of the countryside. Russian reinforcements tried to push in from the north with a handful of T-90 tanks and BTR-82A carriers. But every road they touched was mined or shelled. The bridge to the east had collapsed earlier under a HIMARS strike, leaving 3 armored vehicles half submerged in the river. Farther west, anti-vehicle mines created by German DM-22 systems cut off retreat. By 4 p.m., every path became a dead end. Ukrainian infantry moved slowly through the ruins, clearing unexploded shells and guiding civilians out from basements. Combat medics carried stretchers through streets littered with metal fragments and the twisted remains of BMPs. A PZH-2000 unit, now silent, stood like a monument after firing 300 rounds in one day. Engineers marked danger zones with yellow tape and began repairing the power lines torn apart by shrapnel. No more rockets, no more drones. Only the sound of burning fuel and distant cries for help. The war machines had gone quiet, leaving behind the human voices they always drown out. By 5:30 p.m., the fires still burned high enough to be seen from 10 miles away. But for the first time since morning, the radio spoke a single word: ceasefire. So what remains after precision and power fade? Charred soil, broken homes, and the question no algorithm can answer. Is victory still victory when everything around it turns to ash? War has always promised clarity. One side wins, the other loses. But the story of Rivnechka shows something very different. Precision and technology may decide who controls a map, but they cannot rebuild what fire destroys. Every explosion in this battle carried numbers data, and coordinates. Yet every crater that remained was filled with silence, not victory. The lesson is simple but heavy. The smarter war becomes, the more it reveals how fragile human life truly is. What happened here is more than a military success. It is a message written in smoke. The HIMARS, the PZH-2000, the drones, they are tools born from human intelligence. But they also remind us how quickly knowledge can turn into destruction when guided by fear. Ukraine's defense showed resilience and creativity, proof that courage still matters even in an age of machines. Yet, every inch gained came with a price no machine can calculate. A price measured in homes, families, and memories. So maybe the real question is not who won, but what we choose to learn. Technology without empathy becomes emptiness. Power without reflection becomes ruin.